Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest episode of Good Trouble. This one is a follow-up to my last episode that I did entitled Reconnecting the Dots, Responding to the King of Average about Frosthaven. So it was it ended up being my defense of the cultural criticism project in general, kind of tackling some of the big misconceptions about what it's about and what we're trying to do and articulating a positive vision. I really do believe, despite everyone that's posting woke BS, I really do believe that if understood correctly, everyone wins. You know, people who are thinking about harm or whatever else in products, it'll reduce harm, and people who just want good stories, who just want to have fun at the table, they'll win too. We're having a really hard time getting there. So I lay out a lot of that stuff in the video, and boy, were there a lot of comments. I feel like I've been commenting all day. I'm so thankful. I really am so thankful for people who engage positively and people who criticize. Not the trolls. I've gotten a couple of smattering of trolls. I can smell you. I can smell you coming. I don't want that nonsense. The labeling and just the barrage of unengagement. But a troll is not a critic. There are people who had serious criticisms, but they were able to express it in kindness. Thank you. So I do this every time I do a bigger episode to, kind of synthesize, interact with the audience, follow the conversation. I'm not a believer in just kind of one and done. I like to be thorough with my thinking. That's how we get, more instantiated thinking, deeper in our understanding, and be able to kind of carry that to further conversation. So in that spirit, let me go ahead and follow up on my last video. All right. So first of all, I don't want to just, focus on the critical comments. I want to shout out some of the good heartwarming comments too. Ron Frazier, thank you so much for engaging across multiple videos and sharing your story. Your voice is very much appreciated. Thank you for sharing how you resonated with, especially what was happening in the back end of the last episode. Rafael Ortiz commented early. Kind of gave me some reassurance, because when I do these longer videos with a lot of different sections, the argument is kind of moving slowly. I always fear that I'm losing people and I'm not articulating what I want to, but that's what happens when you just do a long video or any long piece. But it was reassuring to that Raphael was able to follow some of the essential points of the argument, reflective of, really paying attention, and that apparently I was doing something right. So that was reassuring. Thank you so much. Spot made a really great contribution. I used a word that was unfortunate. I noted it in the video. It's hard to edit video. It's already on YouTube, and I want to take it down because I wanted to keep the commentary, the discussion going. But I made a note, and it's reflective that A, I'm still making mistakes, and B, I'm willing to be checked on them, and it doesn't have to go bad. There's nothing wrong with being checked as long as it's done in a spirit of education and compassion, as long as there's good faith assumed on both sides. And I feel like I've earned enough runway with people by being open with my methods and my how I go about things and how much I care, that if I do make a mistake, people can feel free to come at me in the helpful spirit, and I'm able to make a correction, and I know for later. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with criticism. It's just as long as it's done in the right spirit, I'm cool with that. Thank you very much, Spot. All right, so I'd now get to some of the interesting back and forth, discussions that I've had, and it goes to the title of the episode here, which is "Don't take my stuff, don't tell me what to do." If I had to boil down basically most, if not all, of the critical comments towards me, whether it's the content of my video itself or just the larger cultural criticism project in general, and I gotta boil it down to that phrase, the backlash. That's like the molten core of the backlash. Don't take my stuff. Don't tell me what to do. The first part first. Don't take my stuff. What does that mean? I feel like across the different comments, there was this instinct to say, okay, you don't like this. Well, does that mean I have to take it away? Does that mean that you want me to take this out? Black people and orcs, you made that parallel. So what are we going to take orcs out, or we're going to make them, there was this just reflexive instinct that I noticed to, be guarded about stuff. I don't take my stuff, right? And humans, I know from my psychotherapy and just being a person that's interested in humans, we're very loss averse. No one likes losing stuff, but this idea that, cultural criticism represents this rising tide that is going to wash away gaming as we know it and replace it with safety and whatever concept, right? I think it's not true. I think it's completely overblown, but, I am willing to engage in good faith with people who engage in good faith with me. So I would like to respond, and I'll do so through Richard. Richard and I had a pretty extended for YouTube back and forth. Thought it was instructive. I'll let him speak. Richard says, do you think there should be no differences between humans and elves, halflings and tieflings? Should halflings not be short and lose their innate luckiness? Tieflings shouldn't have dark vision or powers derived from their infernal nature. To me, if those traits are taken away, then all those other races are effectively just funny-looking humans, which seems to me as though it would be less inclusive, not more. Excellent point. Not anything that I want either. Let me be really, really clear. And this is me. This is Jason speaking for. And I think, from what I hear from publishers, I think people are, they come back to me and they say, yes, that's what I mean. Like when they're the ones that are producing the games, they say, yes, that's what I mean. They get uncomfortable sometimes with the way the discourse is going, whether it's people on one side saying it or whether it's people on the other side misinterpreting it. But, getting down to the brass tacks of what publishers want and what I'm trying to express is nobody wants to take away anything. We don't want to remove any particular thing. I talk about, games presenting a bunch of points, like data points, right? I did the whole thing, like, Vermling and, the American. I put the dots together, right? So it's like, making the point that games kind of present us with a constellation of stuff, and every single person reads into that stuff, depending on the narrative. Some people miss certain associations. Some people, it's staring them right in the face. Welcome to human beings. Everyone does it, right? And so the fear is, because some people see it and some people don't, that we're going to kind of cow to the people who see it and take it away. It hurts some people, therefore nobody can have it. And I can see how that could be scary, but it's false. It's not what I want anyway, right? So what do I want, right? I don't want to remove. I want to rearrange, right? I want to take the dots that a game presents, and I want to, if those dots are triggering something and consistently over a period of time, and this is not about someone's feelings. I think there's this idea that, like, if someone gets offended, then, we have to cow to that someone. I don't care about someone. I don't care about one person and their feelings. I care about cultures and societies. I care about groups of people, and if certain groups of people are seeing the same thing, like, if I show a game to like different people from outside of gaming, and they say, oh, there it is, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about one person, their feelings. No, I don't, whatever. So if that's happening, right? If multiple people are seeing it over a period of time and it's reasonable, we're not going to remove it, but we're going to like rearrange what's there. That's gaming. That's game design. What are we doing here? Games, I like to think of the themes of games as magic tricks, and the creators of the games are like magicians, where they put a bunch of stuff in the box and they intentionally arrange the elements in such a way to evoke stuff from us. And that's the theme. Right? The theme, there's never a theme in the thing. There's always a conversation between the elements of the thing, how they're arranged, how they're interact with one another, and its connection with the people that are playing it, the human mind, right? My mind, your mind, anybody's mind. So the author's doing it on purpose. They're doing arrangements on purpose to evoke emotions in us. So what I'm asking is, okay, rearrange what's in there to make it better, or to make it more appealing to people, to make it more broadly appealing. The way you've arranged it, maybe you had one audience in mind, that let's arrange it in such a way where we can try to satisfy as many audiences as possible. Make it broader, right? An example I use in psychology is the lines, right? So I'll show an example of lines right there. Which one's longer? I had to think about it, right? I mean, maybe, you're following the lines of the argument and it's like, oh, well, you see it, they're the same size. But trial after trial, study after study, the way I arrange the datum, in this case, the way I arrange the arrows affects what we see. Games are mental tricks, right? And that creates a lot of possibilities. That means we can arrange things in all sorts of ways, in ways that prevent unconscious, thoughtless harm to certain people. All right, so let me try to break this down with as concrete an example as I can. And this example was inspired by Richard in a back and forth, and that's why I don't mind when people push the argument, who disagree, as long as they do so in respect. It made me think of something that I think might be helpful. Okay, so the example comes from George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. Grand Poobah ain't no culture critic to tell him what to put in his book, or if someone does, that he did it of his own free will because no one's forced him to do anything. Anyway, so it goes back to the very first book, The Game of Thrones. Jon, who is one of the main characters, who's just kind of like dour, just person who doesn't want to be anywhere, especially by the first book, leaves the Great Hall. They're having a feast, but he doesn't want to be there. He's playing with his dire wolf outside, and it is the first entrance of the character of Tyrion. First one, enter stage left. Oh, not that Tyrion. He's too pretty. Ugly Tyrion. Anyway, so the scene is, it's a courtyard, and Jon is playing, but Tyrion Lannister is on a pretty high ledge. The ledge above the door to the Great Hall, looking for all the world like a gargoyle. The dwarf grinned down at him. Is that an animal or a wolf? A dire wolf, said Jon. Might I have a closer look at your wolf, says Tyrion. Jon hesitated, then nodded slowly. Can you climb down, or shall I bring a ladder? Oh, bleed that, the little man said. He pushed himself off the ledge into empty air. Jon gasped, and then watched with awe as Tyrion Lannister spun around in a tight ball, landed lightly on his hands, and vaulted backwards on his legs. What's wrong with that? That's just whatever. It's just somebody that's tumbling off the top of a door or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If you ask G.R.M., it is the thing that he regrets writing the most of anything, of any word that he has written. If he could go back in time, he would take that out. Why? It's because Tyrion is depicted as having the condition of dwarfism. And so for most of us, we're going to miss it. But for folks who have that condition, the experience is so much different than that. There's actually people who give testimony that there's a lot of physical pain associated with that condition, that there's a lot that goes into just getting their body ready to, function throughout the day. So that was communicated to George. George is like, oh man, yeah, I totally whiffed on that. And I'll get into what he did to address it a little bit. But the big question is, where did the image come from? That's the central core of the cultural criticism project is, okay, we have these images that make people uncomfortable or that people just don't like. And it's unfortunate. And it's like, all right, let's go back, walk back a couple of steps. What are the cultural associations that people are making in their own minds, where they come from? How can we help introduce an element of critical thinking so that we can rearrange things, make new associations, and then produce new things, better things, more appealing things, broadly appealing things. This is not about taking this thing that was for one audience and giving it to another audience and taking that thing away. And that's the big fear. And I can't say that enough. It is not about that. All right. So with the particular thing of like, okay, Tyrion tumbling and all that kind of thing, it came from a cultural stereotype of the acrobatic little man, right? And what are some of the cultural things in our, what we grew up with that led to, that association? Especially for us geeky type people, hobbits, halflings, right? Especially as halflings have developed. I mean, look, I'm showing that stat line from 5th edition. That is the halfling, and it's been the halfling for as long as I've played D&D, at least in 2nd edition, probably earlier than that, where the halfling has +2 agility and some kind of nimbleness trait, training in acrobatics, and it's just kind of like every halfling ever, no matter where they're born, are going to have that trait, right? And you could see the imagery, the iconography. That Googling that took 1 second. It's all over the place. Okay, so not just that, I'm not. This is not about, now we have to cancel halflings. No, don't touch my halflings. Do not touch my halflings. I love my halflings. Okay. So we got the halfling. Also in other media, like when I was growing up, I watched a lot of that too. That is little person wrestling, what they used to call midget wrestling. And, they're tumbling around and they're, kind of doing the capering thing. And, they're kind of playing into that, reproducing that image as well. And there's other things. I mean, the image of the, tumbling fool, the small person, the jester at court. And there's all sorts of ways in which that core issue of the acrobatic little man has played itself out. So then, so we put those together, or at least George R. R. Martin put them together in his head. And in the 90s, before a lot of this stuff was happening, came up with the characterization of Tyrion Lannister. Am I putting this in there? Well, George Martin is putting it in there. And he has acknowledged this and he has owned this. And I have to say this again, if there was one thing that he wrote that he would want to take out, it would be that thing. Why? 2 reasons. Goes back to my previous video. This is why this is the follow-up. 1, bad storytelling. It became like kind of goofy. When I caught it on my 2nd read a couple of whiles ago, and it just seemed really off and goofy when it happened. And then 2, there's a whole section of the audience that found that kind of harmful. Why is it harmful? Because that's not the real life of a person who's afflicted with dwarfism. Very often, very commonly, there's a lot of physical pain involved in being of that stature, dealing with those physical ailments. Okay, so let's walk it back. This is really important because this is the work of the cultural critic. All right, we're going to go back to the drawing board, back to the associations. How can we rearrange these dots? Okay, so then we are going to take those images and we're going to put them to the side. We're not going to get rid of them. All we're doing is displacing them. We're going to say that those images are not, representative of the little person. We're going to say, okay, that's one expression of someone who is in that way. Like if you ask the wrestlers themselves, they're like, yeah, I mean, this is my livelihood and I'm okay with this and I don't want to take that away either. No way. But it is not normative. It should not be the only way we think about this stuff. So let's, open things up and let's, talk to multiple people in this situation that, have multiple experiences. And that became the process. And then we got a Tyrion Lannister. We got a Tyrion Lannister storyline that was better in every single way. Safer, more resonant. More people can look at that and say, that's me. Which is a thing that we all want to be able to do in fiction, want to be able to look at our favorite characters and think that's me and be inspired by that. So that as opposed to, thinking about it in terms of removing harm, it's like it unlocks, an ability to really resonate with a character, did that. And also made for a better story. So then as the Song of Ice and Fire developed throughout the inner narrative of Tyrion in the books, it highlighted that. You would see every once in a while, he would reference that his body was in pain. And especially in the 5th book where he has to do a lot of walking, walking basically across a continent, his legs are sore, has to massage them. He's just in pain and it's just, kind of very distracting for his inner mental life. And combined with emotional pain, a lot of it coming from his father, Tywin, who looked at Tyrion and all he saw was the little capering fool. So treating him terribly, denying him titles and land and respect and making him the second son. I did you a favor by not throwing you in the sea, you little fool. And it just creates so much more of a rich inner narrative, knowing that Tyrion is the furthest thing from a capering little fool. He's actually in pain. And That's not worse storytelling. I didn't take anything away. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the series. I'm a Tyrion partisan, as you can see. Tyrion in the books, the show, less said about the show, the better. Okay, so did a cultural critic do that? No. I mean, but the idea of a cultural critic is to be able to help an author access those voices if they're not able to speak up directly and present it as opportunities to rethink what you're doing and rearrange the dots, use your magic to make things better. So let me pitch a very direct line to creatives, right? There's two audiences I'm talking about here. It's the creatives themselves and also the people that are enjoying, the fiction. Two creatives. I know it sounds scary. Like, it sounds like you're kind of ceding authority to another person, that you should do what they do. Right? You should do what they tell you or whatever. It is an invitation to work more magic, rearrange more of your dots, alter your fiction. It's your fiction. This was a lack of clarity when it came to the cultural critic and Isaac. The cultural critic doesn't tell Isaac what to write. The cultural critic poses questions and says, hey, what about this? What about this? Hey, I noticed you have this class called a drifter. It's like, what does that even mean? And Isaac's like, I just named it that. That was a cool name. But wait a minute, that's an opportunity. I could have noticed it because I'm thinking about a billion other things, but thank you for that perspective. Now I'm going to drill down and make better fiction out of it because I didn't know that before. I'm going to rearrange the dots. That's what this is all about. It is an opportunity, creative writers, to work your magic. That's all this is, right? I don't want you to be less creative. I want you to be more creative with more inputs, healthier inputs, critical thinking. So then there's a other aspect to what I was talking about. I mean, I could talk to the culture critic, but we're talking about, Gloomhaven and D&D and fantasy. Is there anything that we can do as a community to kind of help the creatives along to, help them make greater associations, right? Okay. This is exactly my point about essentialized races. When we pick a race to essentialize, when we kind of take the wide variety of what all fiction offers us, it could be in Star Trek, it could be the Ferengi, it could be the Klingons, it could be Star Wars, it could be any, Harry Potter with the different, creatures in there. And every single fiction has races and creatures, and I'm cool with all of that. That's so great. To take an opportunity to address whenever we're falling into that essential line, right? That this is the core experience of whatever usually a fantastical race. Humans get the flexibility, right? But the fantastical races, they always have something fixed about them. I don't want to get rid of anything. All I want to get rid of is the idea of fixed. Okay? In D&D, there's already a tool for that. Alternate stats. We've had alternate stats for a long time. Look, all the different types of halflings that there are. I mean, elves, you could be a wood elf or a sun elf. You could be a shield dwarf or a dark dwarf. And all that stuff, those aren't different races in the way that we understand races. They're products of their upbringing, their environment, their culture. They're highly localized. So in the case of the halfling, depends on where you grow up. If you grow up in a certain context, you might have, you might be tougher and hardier, or you might grow up in a context where you are around a lot of humans and you have to be charismatic in order to appeal, in order to kind of justify your existence and make a symbiotic relationship. So you articulate all that and you locate the fixed stuff, the stat stuff, the things that influence your D20 roll in upbringing, culture, background. Does that mean that we have to get rid of the acrobatic, the halfling? No. We just do that. If I'm taking away anything, all I'm taking away is the essentializing. That's an action. That's not a thing. I'm dislocating the actual thing we care about, which is the halfling acrobat. I'm dislocating it, taking it away from race and putting it in upbringing and culture and ethnicity or whatever you want to say, whatever word you want to use. Isn't this better? Isn't this less harmful? Doesn't this resonate with experiences? Even someone of, a white person who's commenting and they'll say, oh, well, not all white people are the same. it's one of those "that's what I'm saying" type things. Not all that, absolutely true. Not all white people are the same. Not all black people, Latinos are the same. Not all orcs are the same. They're maybe there's like certain kind of like cosmetic signifiers, but that's it. I'm okay with orcs with green skin and tusks and all that kind of stuff. Leave that. But do they have to inherently be aggressive? Can that depend on where they grew up and who they grew up with and who raised them? I can go on and on, but I feel like I think I've made the point, right? I mean, this is what I'm doing. I am not taking away anybody's stuff. I do not advocate for it. If anyone says censor, all that kind of stuff, I'm against that. But there's a smarter way to do it. Creatives, work your magic. Audience members, let's work with them and make this stuff broader for everybody without taking anything away. All right, so there is a second half to that main line of criticism, that molten core of backlash to culture criticism. I talked about, don't take my stuff. That's there. The other part is, don't tell me what to do. And I got this sense, obviously this was a thread in a bunch of the comments here, but I'll quote Justin, who says, "I've got to be honest, this is exhausting. I just want to play a board game. I don't need people to tell me what's right or wrong." Hey, I feel you, man. I just want to play board games too. I feel you, 1,000%. And that last sentence is what really gets at what is so triggering for that moderate side. The feeling that, culture critics are telling them what to do, telling them what to think, telling them what to produce, telling them what to like, telling them what to support, or else. And what do I mean by that? That according to what their perception is, that there's that we're hanging consequences over them, hanging social consequences over them. Toe the party line or you will be banned. Toe the party line or we will change your thing and you'll have no voice in it. There's a perception that there's a massive or else, and sometimes that's true, and we can talk about that, but that's kind of not what is meant. And I'm going to do a little bit of moral philosophy over here. I have one of my specializations when I was taking college was in moral philosophy. So I get to dip into that. Woo! There are two senses of the word must. One is that, the social force, you must or else, consequences, all that kind of thing. I think when, people on our side are kind of saying must, it's in the sense of like an inner moral thing. I must look out for my fellow man. I must be my brother's keeper. I'm a parent. I must take care of my kids. And but they don't feel like an outside must. They don't feel like a pressure. It just feels like I have to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I choose it of my own free will. I can't do anything else. Like, I mean, what am I going to do? Like, I have the option to not take care of my kids. I have the option to, sit here and spew venom, and just like woke, and just like put labels. Of course I have these options, but I would never do that. And I feel an imperative in my heart to I cannot do that. Why? Not because someone told me, but because I value our relationship. I value people. I value my kids. And I answer to the must. It's an inner moral thing, right? Every time I see the breakdown between like a right or a left person, well, not every time, but like at least more than 50% of the time, it's like, don't harm people. Don't tell me what to do. Well, you're harming people. You can't do that. It's like, well, don't tell me what to do. What harm are you causing? And it's the problem is the sense of the word must. How do we mean must? This side takes it as you must do it, social pressure or else consequence. And this side takes it as, well, just don't be a dick. But that's what we're asking. We're asking, don't harm people. Do good, avoid evil. That's ancient. So because we're kind of in this like a misunderstanding of what the other person means, I just feel like so many of the internet conversations are going the wrong way. For me, I will talk in terms of like I must quote unquote do it, but I do this. Anything that I do is of my own free will. Isaac, when I had Isaac on the interview, I'm so glad that I had the Isaac interview to kind of put between these two so I can kind of reference that one. I put the direct question to him, and I knew I was going to talk about this, so that's why I put it in the show. I asked them, why are you doing this cultural criticism thing? Are you doing it because you want to do it, or because you think you have to, or you feel like you have to? And that question took him aback. He's like, what? What are you talking about? Of course I want to do it. It wasn't even a thing. Of course I want to do it. And it's more than I just, want to do it out of a flight of fancy. He wants to do it because he values people's fun. He values people. He actually does value people's fun. I know the thing is like, well, he doesn't care about my fun anymore. He's doing it because he does value people's fun. He's changing things that are like, that could be rough patches. Like, animalistic races is a good thing. It's like, well, what do I need animalistic races for? That doesn't change anything about the core experience. I can just, alter that, find a replace, say that differently. More people can have fun with my game. And he wants to do it. And he feels like he has to because he wants more people to enjoy his game. Not because he's being forced from the outside. That difference between inside pressure and outside pressure. And it's not, wrong. See, this is so hard to talk about. The difference between kind of that inside sense of doing the right thing versus outside pressure. I'll say it that way, right? That's where we're getting messed up. On the right, I would invite people, especially if you're kind of like on the moderate right, not the trolls. I don't care about the trolls. Blocked. Sorry, but I'm going to be very, like I said before, I'm going to distinguish careful between the trolls and people who are critical. Huge difference, all the difference in the world. So on that moderate right side, if you are hearing must from us or getting that energy, that it really is like, okay, let's all get together as human beings and agree that, if harm is being done, let's avoid the harm. As opposed to sitting there and saying, you're seeing it, you're putting it in there. I've gotten that comment too, even though I directly addressed it in the show. Of course I'm seeing it and you're not. That's human beings. I got that thing of like, I know a lot of people and they don't see it. I don't care who you know. I see it. There's a lot of people that, they message me. I can't tell you how many people who give me public and private messages. They go, thank you for speaking for me. So I'm not just speaking for Jason in that way. In terms of harmful associations, I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of people who give me their voice and says, yes, keep going. So I'm bringing that in as kind of spirit as I possibly can and saying, let's go a different direction. And I'm trying to say it without the must. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. I'm trying to say it like, let's just do this because it's a good thing to do. But then that there's a reflection to hear a must, a should. Like, if you don't do this, I'm going to send the Ministry of Fun after you. I'm going to report you. Da-da-da-da-da. It's defensive. It's catastrophizing. It's not my method. It's not my style. I feel like it does short circuit a lot of attempts for me to explain some of this stuff. And full disclosure, this is my last video on this particular subject. There is a point where it's like I will get tired because I'm a human being of like just kind of going to this well over and over again. But it is worth the extra effort to explain where I'm coming from with this. If there's a must, the must is coming from inside. And I invite a person to get in touch with that, do good, avoid evil, sense inside themselves, and buy in. Hey, I'm not hurt. Nobody I know is hurt, but these people are hurt, and that matters to me. So as long as my fun is cool, let's work together. So then we get to my side. And I don't make no bones about it. I'm a partisan for the left side. And just because I'm that doesn't mean I can't be critical. I mean, I do think that there are some things that go wrong in terms of our messaging. The message is good. The messaging, the method is sometimes doesn't go well. So what's the message? The message is, do good, avoid harm, basic human core things. Pay attention to harm that can be done, especially to oppressed folks, to women and POC and, people that experience harm, great and just on the micro level, the little subtle things every day. Let's be attentive to that. I love that message. It's a part of the core of my being. And I get the inner moral sense, that fire. So if you see me very fiery, it does come from a deep fire in me. I believe in this stuff really deeply. But I have to watch that fire doesn't burn more than it sheds light. I have to watch that there's a line between those two things. And I'm going to quote HMTK Steve Plays on this really, really great comment. Thank you. Saying how there's a line that gets crossed where people just feel like, it goes from a moral argument to a social force. argument. It goes from appealing to one's higher nature to trying to shame and bring other people in line. You know, if we do this too much, if we use labels too much, I spent a lot of time talking against labels. And, you know, so I've gotten a couple of comments on different forums that say, you know, I wonder what the Chud bros are going to think about this. Or, you know, though the BGG bros must be really mad. And just, especially on social media, if that is that going to be the first line that we talk about? Or, I don't know. I feel like there's more than a few people on that other side that are tired of being shamed. And, you know, there's going to be people on my side that say, too bad, they're doing harm and they're stopping progress. That's just not my way. It's just not the way I'm going to approach it. I believe in what I believe in, but I'm going to continue to persuade. Be as persuasive as possible. Be as open as possible. There is going to be a fringe of trolls that I refuse to engage with. I smell them coming. I feel their language coming. I'm going to seclude that, but there's a wide area short of that where people, I think, could be convinced with a little bit of legwork and a little bit of patience as I try to explain how hard it is to change mindsets. But how much of the world can change if we can actually come together and agree a little bit more often. And if that sounds exhausting, if that sounds crazy, well, I think the fruits are born in the comments. I mean, I've gotten the compliment that my YouTube comment section is one of the best on the internet in terms of YouTube comments, because I do put that extra effort into, you know, not just defaulting to shoulds. And, you know, even though for us, we don't see it because it's so strong morally, we have to be aware that not just because we feel so strongly about it doesn't mean that we can't be attentive to our methods. So that's how I'm hoping to bridge some gaps. Wow. I always do this to myself. I go into my basement and I say, I'm going to bang this out. This won't take me too long. Half-hour video, tons of edits, like tons of footage on the cutting room floor, graphics. And it's like, why are you doing this to yourself, Jason? But I'm clearly passionate about this stuff. And I think that the message is getting through. I mean, I love the reception to the first video. And in a way, this second video is, I think I might call it this maybe, but l'esprit d'escalier. That is a term that the spirit of the stairway, where it's like you get the best ideas and the best conversation pieces on the way down from the conversation. It's like, oh, I wish I could have said that. But I have to acknowledge, A, that the first piece stands, and I wouldn't have come to these different associations and ideas and conclusions without the conversation generated by the first one. So think of this as an elaboration, some clarifications. I hope that I've advanced the ball, and as a profound thank you to every single person, whether you agree or not, that engaged in good faith. This is it. I hope to not talk about Frosthaven again until it hits the table. Hopefully September, October, November, somewhere around there. I can't wait for that. And I want the conversation to be about the game itself. That would be really cool. All right. So this is Jason reminding you, if you can change your mind, you can change the world. Hopefully you know what that means a lot more deeply now than you did before. Until next time, later, everybody.